Welcome to another Facebook Live Lunch and Learn. We hope everybody is staying safe and cool out there. It's been a record-breaking week in terms of heat. We just want to wait a few minutes for people to tune in, and then we'll get started. And as we wait, I'd like to introduce myself and tell you a little bit about the Center for African American Health. Let's make sure we're live. Okay. So, my name is Eric Moore. I'm the Research and Evaluation Coordinator at the Center for African American Health. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the work with the Center of African American Health, we've been in the community for more than 20 years with a focus and commitment to improving the health and well-being of the African American community. And we do that through community-based, evidence-based disease prevention and disease management programs, events, and services. To list some of our programs here, we have some of our recent programs. We have I apologize, I got the audio here. Apologize, everyone. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that, everyone. I just have an echo going, so just want to make sure that we're not interrupting your guys' ability to hear us here. Okay, so as far as our programming, we have a workforce readiness program, which provides teens and adults with the support they need to find their next job. That's mainly around being able to give skills, experience, and interests that are around the participants' own experiences. Other programs we have around family-based are Strengthening Families program. It's an evidence-based, nationally and internationally recognized family skills training program for families and children between the ages of from birth to 3, and then also from 3 to 5. So they come in different sets as far as depending on what kind of children are in the household. Other programs that we have are ones that are actually coming in the fall. So we'll be seeing these turn out late August, September as well. So we have Check Change Control. It's a blood pressure management program. We will have also diabetes education classes. And we have the initial session of our next round of the Aging Mastery program, also known as AMP. Which focuses on helping older adults build their own playbook when it comes to aging well through fun, innovative educational sessions. And it covers topics including exercise, financial fitness, healthy relationships, medication management, and also community engagement, which is very timely for our topic today. If you want to learn more about our work and our programs, please visit our website at caahealth.org. So today we'll be discussing the current challenges facing our community and how that matters and how it matters when it comes to race relations and COVID-19's impact on young people. Joining me today is now Dr. Janiece Mackey, co-founder and executive director of Young Aspiring Americans for Social and Political Activism, also known as YAASPA. It's a youth engagement organization celebrating its 10th anniversary this year with a vision to cultivate youth to be civically engaged in their communities and careers. So Janiece is a Colorado native. She, as I said, she is now completed her PhD at the University of Denver. She grew up in Aurora, Colorado, where she currently resides with her partner and children. You can learn more about Janiece and YAASPA by visiting YAASPA, that's YAASPA.org. We will also provide a link to the organization and her career portfolio in the chat. And for folks who are joining us on Facebook Live today, as we move through today's session, please feel free to type your questions in the chat box below, and we'll address them if time permits. So, Janiece, I just want to say thank you, welcome for coming and joining us today. With all that's going on in the world today, it's easy for people, especially youth, to feel overwhelmed and hopeless, particularly when we're talking about race relations. Because we have been watching injustices that have plagued our elders for years and now persist in 2020. Your biography is so expansive in terms of the work you've done to give young people a voice in social justice and providing a roadmap to affect change in public policy arenas. So Janiece, can you start by telling us a little more about your background and your passion to provide young people with the essential tools necessary to make their voices heard and impact society through civil engagement?
Yeah, thank you so much, Eric, for the beautiful introduction, and thank you, CAAH, for having me. Super excited to continue to be a partner with you all. So again, Janiece Mackey, and I live and reside in Aurora, and really, YAASPA was really built from my counter story, right, from my lived experience. So not going to give the full shebang, obviously, because we're limited on time, but I initially wanted to be a lawyer and ended up pregnant with my first child my junior year and had to work, right? So I entered the field of education as a bilingual counselor and just fell in love with working with youth on the front end. As I was navigating the nonprofit sector in education, I found that unfortunately, my racialized experiences persisted in the stories of the Black and Brown Indigenous youth that I was working with. And so I was like, there needs to be a space for us, right? And so I decided to birth YAASPA with my husband for Black and Brown and Indigenous students to be able to reclaim academic career and civic spaces on our terms, right? So I would say we're almost like a social science incubator, if you will, and kind of a race-conscious space as well, and a collaborative healing space for youth to be able to learn about civic engagement in really healing-informed ways as well.
Oh, that's perfect. Thank you. And that's beautifully said. So, we know that YAASPA just collaborated with the Aurora NAACP chapter on Sunday to provide a healing space for youth to discuss the social political context of what's happening. Can you tell us more about that event?
Yeah, and I actually just want to backtrack just a little bit. Shout out to the President Omar Montgomery of Aurora NAACP and Shartasia as well, who is really a huge partner in that Aurora NAACP space. We've been partnering with them for about the past 3 or 4 years, specifically on an MLK Junior Youth Summit event that we co-host annually, where youth literally claim all the space and they share a lot of the issue work that they are working on in front of community leaders, families, and policymakers as well. And so we really wanted to begin to fortify our partnership. So we just brought on a community partnership liaison. Her name is Crystal Gillis, who is also an educator in Cherry Creek School District, so we can really expand our reach and really fortify that partnership with the Aurora NAACP as well, because we really want to hone in on the brilliance of that entity as well. So fast forwarding to this session this past Sunday, we didn't have as many youth as we would have liked to, but we know that there was a lot, unfortunately, happening in community this past weekend as well. And so there was a lot of mourning happening, rightfully so, right? But we look at this as an opportunity to continue to catalyze our relationship, and we'll be launching that partnership in early September publicly as well.
Oh, wow, that's great. Yes, that's in particular very important when it comes to being able to change things on the community level, and the most we can collaborate and not cannibalize each other, even better. So I would like to, I want to expand on this conversation by discussing the movements going on right now around Black Lives Matter, justice for Breonna Taylor, and justice for Elijah McClain. Before we move into that, I also want to acknowledge that in the first week of July, the city of Denver has unfortunately seen 8 homicides of people of color, with 4 of them being youth between the ages of 14 and 19. We had another one that passed away this past Saturday as well. We'd like to send our condolences to their families and communities. We understand these conversations are hard, but are necessary. So as we move in, let's talk about the various aspects of civic engagement. People might not feel safe joining in on our protests, on protests, but there are other ways that one can work towards justice. Janiece, could you share some specific tactics that people young and old alike might be inclined to do?
Yeah, I really, really appreciate this question. We've had a myriad of students who weren't allowed to go to the protest, right, because there's compounding pandemics happening. So in thinking about our health, right, a lot of youth weren't allowed to go, even though there was that desire and unction of desiring to be in public space. So we've had collaborative healing sessions like the one with the Aurora NAACP, right, where really it's about youth being able to have that space to be held, right, by the village and be able to think of the myriad of ways in which they can be civically engaged. Before kind of thinking about different tactics and methods, I just want to first say that our wellness and our healing is also civic engagement, right? So civic engagement is not always about the consumption for others, right? But civic engagement is also about the centering of our own wellness and ourselves and our own healing as well. With that said, that provides solidarity as well, or opportunities for that solidarity and that learning, that intraracial learning to happen and the intraracial healing to happen as well. That's a lot of what we've been doing with our students who have not been able to attend a protest. Furthermore, if you think about the kind of the will, if you will, of activism, there's a myriad of ways in which we need folks to tap in, right? So we need visionaries. Our youth are the experts of their experiences, right? So when we're thinking about public safety, for instance, and schooling spaces, right now we're working with many educators and community activists in Aurora who are having conversations about cops in schooling spaces, and if that's something that youth would like to continue to see or not, right? So again, really sharing your voice, sharing your stories. We need storytellers, right? We need writers, we need creatives, we need healers, we need educators. And yes, we need, you know, folks who cause that tension as well and that friction that's necessary in order to really oftentimes like shift or completely dismantle, right, white supremacy. So we need a myriad of ways for folks to tap in to that civic engagement space. And one of them particularly that's really concrete, if folks are interested, is youth council spaces with us, where we're having those conversations about cops in schooling spaces in Aurora and Cherry Creek schools.
Yeah, I know that's a big topic. And I'm glad that you brought up the point about us trying to come from a place of healing. You know, when we think a lot of times, you know, a big term a lot of folks have been, you know, saying lately is, you know, having self-care, and it's important because the only way you can participate in community care is to make sure that you actually are healthy yourself. So, you know, I think that's important for people to think about that, you know, for you to participate in the progressive, you know, the progressive efforts in society, you have to make sure that you're looking after yourself and those in your family as well. So I'm glad you highlighted that. That is very important for folks to be able to actually move through these kind of moments.
100%.
Another question we had was, you know, what are your thoughts about the current social political climate regarding the defund police rhetoric and the push to eliminate police presence in schools?
Yeah, so speaking of, right, we very much were in support of DPD not being in DPS, and so we put together a letter called We Gonna Be All Right, which shout out to Gabby, our youth policy link liaison. If folks know that reference, it's a Kendrick Lamar song, right? And we labeled the letter that to say that we'll be all right without them within our school context, right? There's a myriad of different alternative communal ways in which we can think about public safety, right? I don't want to say policing, but I'll say public safety. So we were very much in support of that in honoring the work of Padres y Jóvenes Unidos as well as BLM 5280. And we're having those conversations, like I said, within the Aurora context as well, with educators and most importantly, students, right? Who again, are the experts of their own experiences that they've had with these folks in their building, right? So we're having those conversations. Please look forward to a youth-led town hall, which will be virtual, coming up in the fall around that particular issue within the Aurora context. With regards to defunding the police, shout out, I wanna say, to Candy Sedabaca, who is a city councilwoman in Denver, who talks a lot about charters. Every city has a charter, and I had the honor of being on a panel with her yesterday, and she was telling folks, like, read your city charter because charters can be changed, right? So when we're thinking about policing, whether it is defunding police in the Denver context or Aurora context, reading those charters are important because police chiefs oftentimes are at the helm of what is within that charter. So if we even think about the Elijah McClain case, right? I know that Chief Vanessa Wilson has discussed how there's certain actions that she is not able to take because of that charter. So what does that mean for our activism? What does that mean for the moves of city council, right? So really thinking about that and being strategic about these conversations and really understanding the kind of nuanced ways in which these policies compound to even restrict sometimes folks that are targets when we're community organizing, right?
I think that's a great point. Really what it is, the structural things that support these kind of outcomes. And, you know, the defund police is there, definitely a hot topic, but it is something that needs to be considered when we talk about really fundamentally the role of police in society. It has expanded, and there's a lot of other people who contribute to the public safety aspect of things, like mental health counselors, in particular when we think about in school as well, being able to have counselors there rather than more of a police presence. You know, so that is a very important thing. I think a lot of people should educate themselves more on and really consider about what it is that they really expect from folks when it comes to policing practices. You know, reform is something that's always been there, but we have to think about a way that can actually get us more of these outcomes that we're all looking for as a society.
100%.
So what would you tell people, young people, what would you say young people who think their vote or voice doesn't matter? Also, can a young person, if they don't have, if they want to be a catalyst for change, you know, if they want to be a catalyst for change, but they're too young to vote, how's a way that they can go about doing that?
Yeah, tap into YAASPA, right? So just to share kind of the myriad of ways that that can happen, first and foremost, like basic needs, right? So we have a Centering Community Wellness and Resilience program. With that program, we're providing youth, families, and elders with weekly food deliveries, as well as coaching. So rather than being short-sighted, right, we're really trying to have a holistic approach. So if there's something you're envisioning or dreaming up even, or if you just want to be able to share space with someone and bounce ideas off of someone, or talk about your own mental health, we have a coach actually, shout out to Asia Lyons, who is doing that coaching for us. So you can get food for your family and that mental, emotional, and civic support, right? We also have our summer program, which is actually wrapping up next week. It's a hybrid model. It's our Social Sciences and Policy Institute. We'll be going paintballing next Friday. Woo woo. It allows us to physical distance at the same time. We also have youth council spaces as well. So whether it's just you want to share space with other students and have a processing space, all the way to if you want to navigate youth participatory action research to actually envision policy making, right? And bringing that into fruition in a policy space, we're down for that too. And we honor our youth's labor also by paying our students as well. So we offer paid internships at the high school level and the college level as well, if students are really interested in going all in.
Oh, wow, that's perfect. And I encourage everybody who's interested in the programs that you just, that Janiece just mentioned was, you know, visit the website, again, YAASPA.org, or also you can contact them by email at info@yaaspa.net. So again, YAASPA, YAASPA. So that's perfect. Thank you. That's an amazing amount of programs you have, and particularly when we think about how youth can be engaged in different ways. We know that when it comes to voting, there's historical context behind how we see that. And, you know, youth in particular are trying to be more and more civically engaged when it comes to having that kind of impact on the political system. So that's great. I'm glad to hear that you guys have a lot of programs. It sounds very rich as far as the experiences it can bring for folks. So we had one more question on regarding race relations here. So, you know, while we were discussing, you know, this on the Facebook live chat, you mentioned that Black and young people need to prioritize mental health during this highly stressful time. What advice would you share on how to steward your energy?
Yeah, I love this question. Thank you for that. So knowing that your wellness is enough, I will say, right? I know as, I will say, a young activist still, quote unquote, myself, right? That sometimes it feels like we're not doing enough, right? Like we're not busy enough, especially in this time where we have these compounding pandemics where there's some restrictions, right, in our movement and how much we're really able to be in public spaces. So first, just knowing your wellness is enough, and you actually centering your wellness means the world, because, you know, Eric, as you so beautifully said earlier, we need to be well for the community to be well, right? So that's first and foremost. Secondly, what I will say as well is that think about reciprocity as well. So I'm always talking to our team about this and talking with folks about, you know, what are ways that you can make sure that you're also getting what you need in whatever spaces that you are in or that you're sharing in, right? Make sure you're not completely just being extracted from. Make sure there's a reciprocal relationship there, which also leads to thinking about, you know, spaces where you can bring your full authentic self and not have to compromise any of your varying identities while you're sharing space or engaging in your activism as well. There's also an app called Liberate that one of our team members and board members, shout out to Angel Smith, who told us about as well. It's an app specifically grounded in Black and Indigenous meditation. I really highly recommend that. There is a subscription for it, but, you know, if that's something that's a barrier for folks, I would love to sponsor that for folks if that's something that folks are interested in.
Oh, wow, that's perfect. I feel like this is a great way to segue. When it comes to these sessions, time flies. So to the next topic, which is regarding, like you mentioned, COVID-19. So when it comes to the impact on youth, society at large has been impacted by COVID-19 pandemic. Young people in many respects have been hit very hard. There are so many milestones that have been interrupted in traditional settings that have been turned unconventional. What words of wisdom do you have to share with students who are missing friends, proms, senior ditch day, things that a lot of us got to enjoy pre-pandemic?
Yeah, I really appreciate this, and it's super hard, right? So I just want to honor that. I want to honor that it's difficult. I don't want to be dismissive of that. We had a college intern who's on our team. Shout out to Chelsea, who just graduated from University of Colorado, Denver, and I learned so much from her. And that, simply saying that, oh, everything's going to be fine or you'll be all right is really dismissive, right? So I just want to honor that that's a lot to hold, and that it's heavy, and that it hurts, and that it's painful. I also want to say directly to our recent graduates that we love you, we adore you, you're poised for this time, your purpose for this time, and the village got you in whatever ways you need.
Perfect. Yes. I feel like that's a good point to bring up, is the fact that we have to first try to empathize with people's experiences. We're all going through the pandemic together, but we're not all exactly having the same experience, and we don't want to undermine people's ability to be able to do well as far as navigating this by not understanding where they're coming from. So I think that's very great, and it really helps us with being able to make sure we can share stories effectively by really listening to folks. Black people historically have been under attack, and now it's been looped constantly in the media. Do you have any tips when it comes to sharing, any tips for young people when it comes to sharing the things that they see when it comes to negative images and what they're hearing right now?
Yeah, thank you for that question too. Definitely protect your emotional wellness. I'm a parent as well, right? So my kids are obsessed with TikTok, I'll just say that. And I will say that it's all about like how much you consume, right? Just like anything, like food, right? Like too much of something could be too much. But there's a lot of activism actually that I've seen on TikTok, and my kids are always sharing with me, like, look, mommy, I found this one, right? Of maybe it's a young white person putting their body on the line, or young Black women so eloquently using their creative genius, right, to illustrate their truths in 16 seconds. It's brilliant, right? So I would just say protect your emotional wellness at the same time, but I'm definitely not going to say like that tech is bad, right? Or anything of that nature, because it's really about how you use it as a tool, right? And that you don't use it in a way that it consumes you.
Yeah, that's perfect. I think for me, it always just comes from a space of just trying to be constructive with your own goals, with community goals, but also just looking at what am I trying to achieve, and will this tool allow me to get there? And I think that'll help us be a lot more thoughtful about how we spend our time, our energy, our money, and we'll gain more appreciation for the things in life that we might have not had, because we're able to look at it from a different perspective. I know we're talking about like a lot of it when it comes to like these things that helps us navigate, this new space during pandemic. Is there anything else that you want to share when it comes to people who are young people in particular that are not able to socialize or to be able to really interact with folks outside of the home more than usual?
Yeah, so there's a lot of cool like technological tools that can be used, like get, your Nana, your grandma, whoever, your aunties, right, your friends on Zoom, Google Hangouts. There's like some sort of like Zoom parties or something like that I've heard about as well. There's just so many cool technological tools. Kahoot, shout out to Sierra, who I know is doing some work on Black homeschooling, who created a Kahoot. Our interns, high school interns, Jennifer and Jessica and Phoebe, who've been really working a lot on tobacco and the targeting of Black youth in partnership with the Colorado Black Health Collaborative, created a Kahoot as well, right? So there's ways to be engaging in virtual space. Creating a consistency even sometimes around it can be helpful as well, because it is difficult, right? I do want to honor and name that some folks aren't able to go out because of being immunocompromised, right? So just really thinking about different platforms that can make the virtual space more engaging.
Oh, that's perfect. Oh, and we're at we have about 3 more minutes left in the session. And one thing I just wanted to ask was, how was YAASPA able to pivot around the pandemic when it came to your guys' engagement with youth? Anything special that you guys have done, or maybe other nonprofits or organizations locally that could kind of take a note from you guys?
Oh, wow. Yeah, the pivot, right? So we are a learning education provider as well. We have courses in schools for middle school and high school students, which is a course called Civic Engagement in Community and Career, where we focus on academic and career and civic efficacy, civic literacy, civic engagement, and racial identity development as well. And so we really had to pivot quickly. And so we were using Google Classrooms, we were using Google Forms, Google Hangouts, Zoom, in order to still be a learning education provider with integrity, but still meeting the needs of students and their families as well. We had to have a lot of grace with students and families, right? And kind of getting out of ego, right? And that, yes, we have curriculum, we have content, right? But many students and families at that time needed grace and space, and so we honored that. And from that as well, we created, as I said earlier, the Centering Community Resilience program as well, so that we had more of a holistic approach to the needs of students and families at that time. We provided Wi-Fi boosters as well for students and families, because with so many folks being at home, we had to get one as well, because the Wi-Fi was being drained, and of course rates went up as well from those Wi-Fi providers. And so we wanted to make sure that access was not going to be an issue for students and families, whether they're a part of our program or not. So we also provide that technological support as well for folks. For our summer program, our Social Sciences and Policy Institute, it's typically 2 weeks, and we share physical space usually. But this year, we made a hybrid model, so it's 5 weeks, and the last week is next week, like I said earlier. And there's a kind of a one field trip type of opportunity once a week with the students, but it's been primarily virtual for the students.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. I'm glad that you considered the fact of that barrier of being able to make sure that folks can be able to access these resources. It's been very tough because, we live in a digital age, and a lot of folks think it's just easy to, everybody should have internet access. Everybody should have a device that lets you connect to the internet, and that's not always the case. It's a lot of issues, in particular around the census, when it comes to doing outreach during this time. And that created a lot of people to try to be creative around how they do outreach. And when it comes to community organizations, it's no different. We all have to try to be able to navigate this as best we can to still serve the community. So we are down here at our last minute. Before I close out, is there any words of encouragement you want to give youth during this time?
Just please claim all the space. That's my mantra this year. And so I've been sharing that with our team, with our students. Just claim all the space, and with all of your beautifulness and boldness. Much love.
That was beautifully said. Thank you, everyone. It is 12:30, so we're out of time, right on time. I want to thank you so much, Dr. Janiece, for joining us today. For everybody who's watching, this video will be available along with other information on the center's website at caahealth.org. I apologize. So next Friday, please join us. We'll jump into the future and talk about how to navigate an emerging new world with futurist Chet Sisk, looking beyond COVID-19 during the next Facebook Live Lunch and Learn session. Thank you again all for joining us, and we hope to see you next week. Thank you, Janiece.
Thank you.